Hi, I'm Jack, and welcome to believe it or not, I am some sort of an artist if you count what's happening right now, making YouTube videos as art. If that statement made you scoff at whatever screen you're watching this on right now, know that I also write books and possess, at the very least, above a middle school deviant arter's ability to draw random anime characters. And at one time in my life, this trifecta of interests also happened to include music. Music's actually played a pretty significant role in my life, mostly stemming from my mom's side of the family. She herself is not super into music, save for singing a song before bed, but really as far as instrumentation goes, it's much more in the case of my uncle, my grandmother, and my grandpa. This mostly manifested in the form of the guitar for my grandpa and my uncle, while my grandma was more on the piano and singing side of things. Even further back and relevant to today's movie are my great-grandparents, who themselves were a part of jazz orchestras in New York. Wow. Unfortunately, the allures and ambitions of this occupation is kind of what led to them not having enough time or care for my grandfather and his brother. So what this explanation of my hobbies and short family history has to do with today is that, one, I have experience trying to figure out how exactly I balance my artistic side with the side of me that, needs to make money. And two, I've kind of seen both sides of how the pursuit of music and art can make a person turn out. I've had family members for whom music and art has been a wonderfully enriching part of their lives that they are able to balance with all their other necessities. And I've also seen people that have been way too consumed by it that it consumes them eventually. This curious question about how far exactly we should go when it comes to the pursuit of art is one that a lot of especially young artists toil with. So we're going to use Whiplash for you, young artist who doesn't entirely know what they want to do with their life yet, to figure it out. Whiplash, through the eyes of its protagonist, Andrew Neiman, basically separates the world out into two kinds of people: artists and everybody else. Andrew's arc then is to figure out which one of those he is, and the narrative kind of paints a very black and white portrait of being on one side or the other. There's an unfortunate number of people that we can think of when it comes to examples of those who have lost themselves in their pursuit of art. I mean, there's literally a group called the 27 Club of artists who died at 27 from either drug-related issues or suicide. Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, Janis Joplin, Elvis. Unfortunately, there are many people who are writ in the history of art that met untimely deaths. This also isn't even like a 20th century issue either. I mean, look at Van Gogh and Basquiat. Artists are cursed, basically. But of course, the main comparison point for Andrew is that
Charlie Parker didn't know anybody until Joe Jonas threw a symbol at his head.
And Andrew clearly lays out his motivations here.
I'd rather die drunk, broke at 34 and have people at a dinner table talk about me than live to be rich and sober at 90 and nobody remember who I was.
I feel like this sort of strikes the viewer as a stupid aspiration because our inherent response to wanting to die young with nobody to care about you generally tends to be pretty negative. But what I think really drives this home for the viewers is not so much that Andrew is motivated by his aspiration to be as good as the greats, it's that he doesn't want to be as bad as the failures. There's this conversation that Andrew and Fletcher have on his first day of studio band, and I really think it drives this point home when you can feel the subtle unease when Andrew mentions that
My dad's a writer.
Oh, what's he written?
I guess he's more of a teacher, really.
Oh, college.
Pennington High School.
not only does Andrew have his dad as an example of who not to follow, but Fletcher kind of reinforces this idea of looking for inspiration outside his family when he says,
So no musicians in the family. Well, you just gotta listen to the greats then.
there's this palpable sense of embarrassment that Andrew has about the fact that his dad never became the great artist that Andrew wants to be. And it's this internal shame that Fletcher uses to guide Andrew even further down the dark path he wants him on. This same dilemma of wanting to avoid the perceived mistakes of the past generation shows up again in Andrew's romantic life. His date with Nicole at the pizza shop is twofold in regards to learning about his perception about artistry and life. Nicole talks about how her mom used to go out of her way to insult her when she was a kid, which is explained by the fact that,
well, she did want to be an actress when she was my age.
Her clarification immediately leads to Andrew asking, well, what does she want to do? And her answer utterly confuses him. She's unsure of what she wants to study and picked her college more so based on the mere fact of getting in than any particular motive. Andrew, conversely, immediately and shortly answers his own reason for attending Schaefer.
It's the best music school in the country.
Because he's just so single-minded about what he wants. What I find interesting is that at this time, it's entirely possible that Andrew has more respect for Nicole's mom, who kinda sucks, because she wanted to be an artist and actually strived for it and failed in the process, than he does for Nicole, who is a better person, but just doesn't really know what she wants to do in her life yet. A similar yet different scene plays out at family dinner. Despite all the effort that Andrew's put into his music and the fact that he's already made immense achievements in his career, no one around him really cares. Instead, they direct their pride towards Andrew's cousins, because they have more mainstream sorts of success. And of course this upsets Andrew. By all relevant markers, he's doing incredibly well for someone his age in his field. Meanwhile, it's his cousins who get the praise, even though
It's Division 3.
Andrew's cousins still have a direction in life, but the societal perception of their respective goals still inserts friction between them. As Andrew puts it,
I'd rather die drunk, broke at 34 and have people at a dinner table talk about me than live to be rich and sober at 90 and nobody remember who I was.
meaning that despite any kind of personal suffering he might experience, he believes it's worth it so long as people will then value him as an artist. Here, he's getting the exact opposite. Despite all the suffering he's put himself through, the people in his life don't really care about his success. It's this obsession with becoming a great artist and having his name known that ultimately leads him down his dark path with Fletcher, that Andrew is willing to throw away his humanity if it means he'll become a great artist. It's like making a deal with the devil to trade your soul for the sake of success. And so, rejected by his family, Andrew sinks deeper and deeper into the black pool of artistry that Fletcher tempts him into. Devilishly clad in black and slowly corrupting Neiman over to his side, Andrew's style and personality begins to reflect the dark anger that Fletcher constantly exudes, until he's been completely stripped of the man that he is. In the end, all that really remains is the artist. Fletcher subsumes his soul. He gets his Charlie Parker. He gets his artists, whose tune is going to be sung throughout history. But like... So Andrew's got his way of going about art. But what about us? I don't know about you, maybe I just don't have that artistic dog in me, but the idea of being the sort of person that Andrew becomes doesn't sound very good. But what does it even really mean to make art? Like, yeah, Andrew's gonna go on and he's gonna make a bunch of great music and a bunch of people are going to listen to him, but for what purpose? Kind of the great thing about art, I think, is that it's a representation of the person that's making it. You're literally pouring out your own humanity into a different medium and then sharing it with other people. But if you're someone like Andrew, who doesn't have any humanity left and is just the artist now, what's the point? There's that intuitive feeling of whether or not a work is soulful or soulless, and if you've been stripped of everything that makes you human, you have no more soul to give into the things that you're making. Andrew may have incredible technical skills, but he has none of himself to give anymore. So here's the deal. I think that artists, you watching, me speaking, not to sound pompous, but I think sometimes we give ourselves really unrealistic expectations about what it means to be successful. There's an author named Brandon Sanderson who is very well known for his immense catalog of fantasy books, and also happens to have a very accessible writing course here on YouTube. Within these videos, there's this really great video that is kind of about your expectations as an author, which you might find that a lot of creatives really don't like to talk about. Basically, he gets into the nitty-gritty of your chances of making it in the industry. And in there, I think there's this really great nugget of wisdom.
I have this sense that is actually, I think, sometimes detrimental. And I can express this best by, I don't know if any of you writers have had this, but you tell your friends or your family, I'm working on a book. And what do they immediately jump to? Is it published? How much is they going to pay you for it, right? Like, that is the first thing that people jump to, unless they jump to. But you don't have to have as your goal that you want to be a professional writer. You can write because it's good for you. If someone came to me in their 40s, like I am, and they're like, and I'm like, what do you do? They're like, oh, I love to play basketball. I go play every Wednesday. I would not jump to, when are you going to play for the NBA? I would think, that's great. That's good for you, right? Going and being active and having a hobby, going and playing a sport, just really good for you.
Here, Brandon illustrates a discrepancy that we have in society in regards to comparing these sorts of activities. His critique applies to more than just recreational sports, but the essential difference of our general perception of these two activities is that of a results versus process-oriented value judgment. Many view one as intrinsically good simply for performing the act, while the other's value is judged off of one's ability to be recognized by others for doing so. Yet, both activities offer a means of enriching the individual, regardless of how many people around them judge it. Exercise will give you physical and mental benefits, and creative work allows you an avenue of artistic expression which leads to various mental, emotional, and spiritual benefits. Despite having an emphasis on one extreme of the spectrum given how bombastically Fletcher represents it, I think it's important not to forget about the quieter end of this. Specifically illustrated through Andrew's father, we do a disservice to ourselves when we abandon our artistic endeavors and sink too deeply into the minutiae of our careers. If you've dabbled in artistry of any form, I'm sure that you can relate to at least some degree with the plight that the movie presents. So how do we respond to it? I'll be frank, I don't really know what the answer is, but I do know my answer at least. I think anyone who has artistic aspirations ultimately has to have a conversation with themselves about how much they're willing to risk for it. Unfortunately for us, there tends to be a negative correlation between pure artistic intent and the amount of money that you can make off of it. The successful artists among us are the exception and not the rule. There's a reason why starving artist is a well-repeated phrase. But what that doesn't mean is that we don't have ample opportunity to pursue art in between the time that we're working on our careers. People like me, at least, who enjoy things like writing or small-scale video production can still get the tools to make sure that we can explore ourselves artistically. I still have a pretty regular office job, and there's somewhat of a creative side to it, but frankly, it's what I do to pay the bills. I save the artistic stuff for my free time after the fact. I like the fact that I'm able to create art in my free time and that I can have a job that makes me feel secure and comfortable. There are other things like music and acting that do kind of require more of a personal self-sacrifice when it comes to pursue them. I mean, if you're an actor, you have to actually move to hell on earth to get any sort of traction. But even then, there's outlets for these sorts of things. My grandpa and grandma and uncle and now cousins all were involved in some sort of a band and would play at various local things. And as for actors, I mean, there are local theaters that you can get involved with too. You can still make small-scale film productions with your friends. In terms of your worth as an artist, it just really isn't a matter of what other people have to say and perceive about you. It's the fact that you make art. I mean, look at the internet. It is pretty objectively awful for our emotional and spiritual health, but it has offered a pretty great alternative than having to move your entire life somewhere because you want to pursue an artistic goal. Suddenly, there is an audience of literally billions of people that you can share your stuff with, even at little upfront cost to you. Art is awesome, and making art is awesome, and everybody that's got a soul, which I'm pretty sure everyone does, should be making it, including you. It shouldn't really matter what the societal expectations of art are when the thing that's actually worthwhile is the doing, not the recognition for the doing. So go, right now, make art. Bye-bye.